So, Ramattra is officially out. With all the hype around him, you probably noticed that he's picked in every single game. Did you play against him and have no idea how his ability works and how to counter him? If so, at the end of the video, you'll have all the information you need to effectively shut him down. Ramattra won't be a complete mystery to you anymore. As always, in this video, we'll cover his kit, his playstyle, tips to counter him, and his counters. At the end, I'll also add some honorable mentions that are worth playing. If that sounds interesting, let's hop into it. First of all, we'll start with his two different forms. When you pick Ramattra, Omnic form is what you're starting with. In this form, his weapon is called Void Accelerator and it has its own primary and secondary fire. For primary fire, Void Accelerator fires a stream of projectiles in a fixed and straight line. It has no fallout damage and does poke damage at medium range. It also has a headshot multiplier, which makes it quite strong when you think about it. No fallout damage, an easy projectile to hit, and the headshot multiplier is no joke. For secondary fire, Ramattra creates a barrier at a targeted area similar to Sigma's shield. It has 1000 health and a duration of 4 seconds, which is way less than Sigma's barrier. However, it is placeable anywhere. It can go on top of other abilities like Maze Wall, for example. His L-shift ability, Nemesis form, transforms Ramattra into a bigger target, adds 2 additional arms, and gains 150 armor. He stays in this form for 8 seconds and then goes back to his Omnic form. In Nemesis form, his primary fire and secondary fire also changes. So for primary fire, Ramattra punches forward and creates a wave of energy with every punch. It pierces shields and travels through enemies. It's considered as a projectile, but did you know that D.Va's defense metrics cannot absorb it? It's a weird interaction, but that's how it goes, I guess. For secondary fire, he crosses his arm and reduces damage taken from the front while also reducing movement speed. It's pretty straightforward. It has no cooldown or duration. You can block for the whole duration of the transformation if you wish to. It also reduces the damage from area of effect abilities like Hanzo's ultimate. His E ability, which is available in both forms, is called Ravenous Vortex. It's a ball of nanites that slows, grounds, and damages enemies. Once it's fired, it will rebound on walls, roofs, and enemies. It will only trigger once it hits the ground. The trigger will draw enemies downward. His ultimate is called Annihilation, and Ramattra transforms into his Nemesis form and lashes out toward any enemies within range. It deals constant damage. It's similar to Zenyatta's ultimate, but instead of healing, it does damage. As long as the ability is doing damage, the cooldown is paused. So in theory, the ability can last forever. Well, until everyone dies. If it's not dealing any damage, it lasts for 3 seconds. Okay, that's it. Now that you know how his kit works, you need to understand the strategy behind Ramattra's playstyle. In his Omnic form, the one with the staff, Ramattra will play at longer range and poke you down. As I said earlier, his primary fire has no fallout damage, so it's easy for him to hit you from across the map. Combine that with his shield and he can poke you down without taking any damage. On the other hand, in his Nemesis form, it's the complete opposite. Ramattra is strong at close range, he has no shields, but reduces a great deal of the incoming damage while also doing a good amount of damage, but in close range only. Okay, so now we know that Ramattra is either a long range or close range hero. How can we counter that? Do not worry, there are tactics to easily counter him. From bronze all the way to master, these tips are the best. First, and probably the most important for you, is to play around his cooldowns. Why? Ramattra is highly reliant on his Nemesis form for close range combat. He has 8 seconds when he transforms, so you have to survive the duration, and once he goes back to Omnic form, you can easily dive him and shut him down. It really is straightforward. Is Nemesis form on cooldown? If yes, dive him, or at least try to close the gap. Second tip is mobility. His Vortex ability is supposed to ground and counter flying and dashing heroes. However, it's nowhere near as strong as intended right now. Ramattra himself has no mobility, so you guys need to play around that. If he's in Nemesis form, he can only reduce damage from the front. If you play a highly mobile hero that can get behind him easily, you can completely counter him. Another reason why mobility is so strong is that you can also run away from his ultimate, which is about the only way to really survive it. I guarantee you that if you play around his cooldowns with high mobility heroes, you won't lose. Now we get into the best picks for each role. We'll go with tank, DPS, and support in that order. I will also include honorable mentions at the end of the video. Before I start, I would like to make something very clear. All counters are only counters if you actually play the matchup right. Picking a counter and not knowing what to do won't help you. You will most likely still lose. As a tank player, the best pick is Roadhog. Hear me out. I know that Hog has no mobility, however, you need to soak all his damage to help out your team. As I said earlier, shields are useless, so that leaves you with Hog, who is incredibly good at tanking as much damage as possible. In close range combat, Hog is no joke either. You can hook Ramattra in Nemesis form and force him to block for the whole duration. It really is the best scenario possible when you're playing against him. Also, if you manage to hook Ramattra while he is in Omnic form, he either has to transform immediately and block or just die. So far in all elos, Roadhog is the best tank since Zarya got nerfed, and he's the best tank to run against Ramattra 100%. As a damage player, the best pick is Sojourn. She has enough range to contest him while Ramattra is in Omnic form. Blizzard also decided to buff Sojourn, so she has more damage than before. In Nemesis form, his hitbox is so big that hitting him with Sojourn secondary fire is not hard at all. To top it all off, Sojourn can also slide and jump away from Ramattra's ultimate and survive it easily. She's all around the best pick possible as a damage player. As a support player, the best pick is Ana. Her kit is the literal definition of healing from a distance. Ramattra has no way to flank you and you should be safe. The most important part here is your positioning. You can't be in range to be hit by his punch wave. If you're there, you're out of position. However, if you're well positioned, you should be fine. Also, with his massive hitbox, hitting a sleeping dart should not be an issue. If you have a decent team that won't shoot a sleeping target, I know that's a lot to ask, you can sleep dart Ramattra for the whole duration of his ultimate and effectively save your team. Now our honorable mentions. For tank player, Orisa is a good pick. She has no shield, so that's good already. She is the second best tank at just soaking damage with her Fortify ability. Basically, if you play your cooldowns right by saving Fortify for Nemesis form, the matchup should be easy. If you're a little bit more advanced, you can also just ignore Ramattra and go for his support and kill everyone. For damage player, Ashe works well for 2 reasons, well actually 3. She has enough range to contest him at long or medium range. She has her coach gun which can be used to put enough distance between you and Ramattra. Lastly, Bob is extremely effective in this matchup. If you place him behind Ramattra, his block is nullified, and it also forces him to choose between blocking your Bob or attacking your team. If he ever turns around to block Bob's damage, you are free to shoot at his back. It's a tricky situation and an overall great pick if you're comfortable with Ashe. For support players, Kiriko is the second best support. When playing her, you should absolutely not heal bot. Lending her primary fire is easy and should not be a problem in this matchup. You can cleanse Ramattra's Vortex ability and help your team get out of it. Kiriko's ultimate can also provide the movement speed necessary to run out of Ramattra's ultimate. Overall, you see a trend here. The best picks against Ramatra are mobility, good tankiness, and movement speed buffs. Depending on your role, you'll find a hero with at least one of those and you should absolutely pick it. If you're still here, you now fully know how to counter Ramatra, so apply these tips in your next casual or comp game against him and let me know how it went in the comments below.